Welcome back, Nap Trappers. This is what's fast becoming our favourite episode of the week. Not that we should have favourites, but this one's super fun. This is our Sleep Detectives episode where we answer 5 of your burning baby sleep questions that come in through the week. And we have some goodies today.
Yeah, I'm
Lots to
excited to
talk
get
about.
stuck in. Yeah.
All right, let's do it. All right, this 7-month-old baby has been on 2 naps since 5 months, sometimes waking at 5:40 a.m. and stays in bed till 7 a.m. I have a lot of follow-up questions.
Oh, so many.
Yeah, like we always do. There's so much more. Because also there's lots of contributing factors to early rising, which I'm guessing from the question is the problem that they are asking about. I'd want to know timings of naps, timings of feeds, all sorts of things that could also be contributing to that. But I'm going to take it at face value.
Yeah.
I'm going to say that a baby that's been on 2 naps since 5 months old, it would not be unexpected for me to see chronic early rising, most likely due to overtiredness from just needing to restructure the day. Maybe some lengthy wake windows, not enough naps and not enough time asleep during the day, just a wonky schedule. And wonky schedules often result in overtiredness, which ironically leads to being awake in the night and being awake in the morning.
I'm just trying to sort of think about my initial thoughts. So like taking it at face value. So at face value, I would be thinking, because, at this stage, if you've listened to our Early Rise Protocol podcast of how you would fix that, 5:45 and then leaving, or delaying the start of the day until 7 o'clock. Mum's already doing that.
Yeah, that's the hard work.
Yeah. So what I'm wondering then is, where is the cot? And I'm wondering if the cot or the bassinet is in mum's room, and potentially there's some stimulation there from, room sharing, and there's not much sort of movement or wiggle room going back to sleep because there's some stimulation there. So that would be one of my first questions, like, are they room sharing or have they got their own room?
Which would still be commonly seen at 7 months of age.
Yeah. I guess if you were wanting to work on things, it would probably be, if everything else was fine through the night and you're wanting to work on early rising, because it's the most fragile time of the whole morning, and very, you want to keep everything low stimulation. If you are room sharing at this point in time, it could be a really great idea to move out at this point, if you felt comfortable doing that. And then my first thing would be, what time is the first nap happening?
Could that be reinforcing the early rise?
Yeah, and then also bedtime. So with a 7-month-old, they don't have very long wake windows. And to be on 2 naps, you would have to be on pretty chunky naps to be able to get through the day. So like you, Sally, I'm sort of thinking that there's some scheduling issues, and perhaps maybe bedtime is actually in the 6s, early 6s. And then
in
maybe
which case that
isn't.
Would get you to the 5s.
Yeah, and then you sort of work back to, okay, well, perhaps 5:45 isn't actually that bad if they're having a 6 o'clock bedtime. So there's a lot of questions to be answered there.
I highly recommend going and having a listen to the very first episode of this podcast, which is called Don't Drop That Nap. And we talk all about the power of holding on to that third nap for as long as possible, for all of the reasons we've just talked about: the overtiredness, the anchoring in of the first nap so that you don't accidentally reinforce an early rise from a timing perspective, that we're not stretching wake windows too long, or you don't end up with a really early bedtime, which, as you mentioned, then 5:40 isn't early rising. It is just a baby has had their quota of sleep overnight. Because for me, and I don't know how long this baby has been on the protocol of delaying getting up until 7 a.m., but if everything else is aligned, after a solid 7 to 10 days, maybe max 2 weeks, that should really have resolved. Yep. But you should also have seen glimmers of progress throughout that time, not just, and then on day 12 it all clicked into place. You'd be having a baby that was getting up, 5:40 becomes 6 and 6 becomes 6:15, or they start going back to sleep at 6:30 and then you're waking them at 7. You would be seeing progress if that was what it came down to. So for me, again, at face value, I would actually be looking at bringing in the third nap, even if it was just temporarily. We ideally want to have it until closer to 8 to 9 months. But I would just be bringing it back in, and you got to be strategic with your timings. You'll have to cap naps and shift things around so that your early rising hard work of delaying getting baby up until 7 actually is productive for you. And then it's not just done in the hopes that it will work. The third nap will bridge you to bedtime with a well-rested baby. You'll get your milk feeds all lined up. And then, as you said, yes, there's definitely so many other causes of early rising that you'd also want to rule out as well. But for me, the 2 naps since 5 months is what jumps out.
Yeah, 100%. And this would be an interesting case if everything was totally fine through the day and there was 2 2-hour naps and bedtime was
Which
great
there
and
may
everything.
be.
And there could definitely be, there isn't just one way to do things. And it doesn't mean that if you're not doing it our way, it's never going to work, because we know this to not be true.
Oh, full transparency. Both of my babies dropped to 2 naps at 7.5 months.
Yeah, so
and I get everyone to keep it for longer.
Yeah. So we know that it can work. It's just, to us, I think there's a lot of pieces of the puzzle that we just sort of want to, because ultimately we don't want anyone sleep training when there's no need to, if that makes sense, or if it's futile. Futile?
I think you're trying to say
fruitless.
It was like, and futile. I love it. Futile.
So yeah.
We'll get that on a cap next.
Yeah, so we definitely want you to be, if you're doing the hard yards, it needs to be for like going to work in your benefit. Otherwise, it's just, if it's going nowhere, there's no point. So we'd like to hear
and it's
what's going on.
worth saying, definitely feel free to message us. It's also worth saying that, look, even if we found out a more significant root cause and we brought back the third nap and we moved baby out and everything, your baby's little alarm clock is probably still going to go off at 5:30. If 5:30, now I can't speak, 5:40. It's futile at 5:40. Then it's not going to magically fix. We're still working with the baby's habits and also circadian rhythm, their internal body clock. So that is when, however, the incredible work that you're doing of delaying getting up until 7 will actually start to be productive, because your baby will be better rested to then go back to sleep, start sleeping longer, the first nap will anchor in, and it should all just have a nice flow-on effect. So it's not always a quick fix. Even if we bring the nap in and we do all the other things that we've just mentioned. But because you're already doing the hard work, you just continue to do that and it should resolve.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. Oh, I like this one from a Canadian follower. Hello.
Oh, hello.
I love Canada so much. Okay. Are Merino sleep sacks worth it? So hard to get my 8-month-old baby's temperature right. It's summer here in Canada. For me, a Merino sleeping bag is definitely worth it. It is a financial investment. I do think it is really useful if you have fluctuating temperatures. Baby goes down in a 28-degree room, and then at 3 a.m. it's 18. I mean, that's more on the extreme end, but you never know.
It happens.
I think they can be really useful and they will last you a long time.
I think the good thing about Merino bags is that they have a really great size range. So it captures quite a few seasons for little ones. So it's not just a one season. You know how like some of the bags, when they're little, are 3 to 12 months. And so you just get one winter out of them. So a lot of these Merino bags designed because they are an investment piece, you want the longevity from them. So I totally agree. They're really great for that purpose. And it does help to take some of that guesswork out.
Mm.
I particularly love them for winter and so my favorite is to use a winter weight wool babe over here in Australia. And I do the winter weight just in the winter because I just know that it's going to
So snug.
keep babies nice and warm. And if you don't
Mm.
want to use heating overnight, it will do the trick to quite low temperatures. But the 3 seasons one is one that a lot of families will use for every other season of the year.
I
So
just recommended it to a client in
yeah,
Queensland this week because they don't have the winters that you and I have, Beck.
no,
But they do have 28 degrees at bedtime and then it's down to 22. So super sweaty and then a really comfortable sleeping temperature and how to navigate that. So they're getting the 3 seasons one. I'm actually just Googling as we speak because for this Canadian listener or anyone really in the Northern Hemisphere, I love the brand Woolino, and they have a 4 seasons sleeping bag. And I actually had this recommended it to me by a Canadian sleep consultant. So for those listening, Beck and I are actually and this is how we met. Beck and I are part of this really great supportive group of sleep consultants from all around the world. We all trained and did the same course. And then we've got sort of this offshoot community where we troubleshoot questions and cheer each other on. And it's a really lovely supportive group. And I did a call out saying, what sleeping bag are my Canadian colleagues using? And they had recommended ages to me, the Woolino 4 seasons. And I'm just reading here, it's suitable for room temperatures 63 to 75 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 17 to 24 degrees Celsius. And that means you go into the night and it is so set and forget. You still have to layer accordingly underneath, but it's so breathable, it's so adaptable, and if it can endure a Canadian winter, then and a Canadian summer, then I think that's a pretty good review.
Well, so for anyone else listening, so did you say it was 17 degrees to 23?
To 24. 24
to 24.
Celsius.
So that's a 1 tog and a 2.5 tog bag rolled into one.
Yes.
And that's the beauty of having those natural fibers being so breathable, and it just maintains the cooling and heating, so you don't have to sort of think about it. You know, for anyone who's on the fence for, oh my gosh, I'm so unsure, do I use a 2.5? Do I use a 1 tog? Get a bag like that. Like get a Merino bag that is the 3 seasons, so you don't have to think about it.
Yep.
Because
we have enough mental load.
Yeah. I mean, it's really tricky when you've got rooms that are, say, 21, 22, 23, in these transitional seasons, and then they dip to 19. So 23 degrees is a 1 tog bag, whereas 19 degrees is a 2.5 tog bag. So when it's sort of scaling between both temperature readings or tog rated bags, like it makes kind of
tricky.
sense, doesn't it?
Yeah. I think they're a wonderful idea. And to be honest, I just didn't really know about them when I had my own little babies. But I also always had a temperature controlled room. So again, we talked on the last episode about type A parenting tendencies. So I was like, okay, we've just got a 2.5. That'll last us year round because I'll keep the room at 21 degrees Celsius, 365 days a year. But I also think this is really good for travel too. Yeah. So if you are going overseas or if you're going somewhere more exotic or going skiing, then this is very versatile. And again, your baby will be so familiar with it that nothing will change. Nothing will need to change. Okay, so great question. And shout out to Woolino and Woolbabe because they are our go-to recommendations for families, no matter where you are in the world. Okay, next one. 11.5-month-old, still not sleeping more than 40 minutes for naps. Also a common scenario we see. Naps are hard. Naps are significantly harder than nights.
They are, and it's a little bit of work to get these naps on track. It's not if you're at this age now, and they're still only taking 40 minutes. Then I'm going to say that we need to make sure timing is spot on,
Mm-hmm.
And then it's a case of, can your little one self-settle for the nap?
Yes.
And if
Have
they
they got the
can
skill?
self-settle, yeah. And like, not just I go in and then I pat, 4 times. I wait until they're really drowsy and then I walk out. To me, that's not self-settling at this age. You've got to be able to pop them into the cot and walk out, and then for them to be able to do their own thing, and it takes
Yep.
them, say,
From
5 or
a
10
wide
minutes
awake state.
to fall asleep. Um, if they're able to do that, then what I'm going to suggest is that you leave nap 1 at 40 minutes and then you work
Yep.
on lengthening nap 2. And to work on lengthening nap 2, you kind of just have to adopt a delay attitude to getting them up, because what can typically happen is, if we are resigned to they only sleep 40 minutes, so there's no point trying to resettle, resettling never works. We just get them up after 40 minutes, and then that reinforces to our little ones and to our little ones' internal clock that 40 minutes is totally fine, and there's absolutely no reason on earth to even try to link a
No.
sleep cycle.
And then mum comes in and tries. I'll
Yep.
let her have a go for 20 minutes. I'll keep
Yep.
crying, and then she gets me up and I get to do something way more fun. It can
Yep.
definitely become ritualized, can't it?
So you've just got to create an opportunity for the internal clock to wire into the nap, that you're still being exposed to darkness. So you kind of want to delay getting up, even though they are awake and they're probably not going to go back off to sleep for a good week or so. It's really just about sort of finding a technique that resonates with you and then delaying getting them up, because it doesn't happen overnight. It's not just a quick fix. You've got to sleep train that nap. And
Yeah. Yep.
and typically at this age, less is more, because the
It's very
more we put into
overstimulating.
it, the more stimulated they become, particularly around naps, and they have got longevity and stamina at this point.
Yes.
So
Yes. And if you are not so sure on your baby's self-settling skills, or if you think, oh no, I do rock them to sleep or pat them off to sleep, or I hold the dummy in while they drift off to sleep, the place to start is actually at bedtime. At least that's how I would look at
yeah,
it. When sleep pressure is on your side, melatonin is on your side, and then you have 11 to 12 hours to practice the skill. And take confidence from developmentally, we know that at 11 months old, a baby absolutely has the capacity to link a day sleep cycle. A lot of them just don't know that they need to or how to. And so by doubling down on self-settling at bedtime and then mastering that skill overnight, you'll then know, oh, this baby absolutely has the skill. Then you transfer it to falling asleep for the nap. And once they can do that, then comes the linking of the sleep cycle. For me, if I do a 2-week package, that's the final piece of the puzzle. And you and I talk about the early rising protocol, and we just mentioned it before, which is delay, and it's hard work. And then eventually, when you've got everything lined up, that baby starts sleeping later and later and later. This is kind of the nap training protocol, which, if you think about it, every time you open the door to go in, that's light. It's also socialization. They see you, even if you're trying to be a ninja. At 11 months old, that baby knows what's going on and what's happening outside that door. And so it is about less is more. And if you just think about it as the final piece of the puzzle, if I just do this last stretch of the sleep work, then my baby will consolidate their naps. And then, you might feel like nap 1 will automatically get better because they're like, oh, yeah, I've already been doing that for nap 2. I'll start taking a longer nap 1, or maybe some overnight waking start to reduce because they're going into the night less overtired. It's really helpful. But as you said, it can take some work. It can be a bit of a project. Definitely. But for what it's worth, Beck, you and I do a lot of 2-week packages. We will have 9 times out of 10 achieved, if not more, nights and naps. And that includes consolidating naps by the end of the 2 weeks, but especially for an 11-month-old.
Oh, 100%.
That would be part of our, that's the time frame. Just to give listeners perspective, that we're not signing you up for 6 weeks of nap training, a second sleep cycle. It's, if you've got everything else lined up, it's a good week or so, and then they start to do it.
Yep,
but
right.
You need to know that they've got the skill. All right, let's have a look here. How do I anchor 6-month-old to 4 hourly feeds when he wants it around the 3.5 hour mark? You and I, this is a question based on and I love hearing when listeners and followers use the words that we use. So
Yeah.
thank you for paying such incredible attention, because we talk about anchoring feeds. And if anyone is just tuning in for the first time, what that means is that when we are working on sleep, and I emphasize that because we don't mind how anyone feeds their baby, what time they feed their baby, unless we are fixing a sleep issue or working with you. And one of the first and really important ways that we do that is making sure that babies are getting enough calories during the day. And in order to do that, we like to anchor in our milk feed timings, which means we space our, and it's breast or bottle, so long as baby's taking a full feed, we anchor them in, and they don't really budge.
Yeah,
Just like an
right.
anchor, everything else might be choppy and
floating
wavy around
around.
at naps and grizzling and this, but
Yeah.
we always come back to this anchored milk time so that we have a baby that takes a full feed versus getting a bit snacky. For me, you just push through. From 3.5 to 4 hours, it's just a bit of distraction. You just push through to 4 hours, and it may be that it's even just on 1 or 2 spaced feedings of that little extra stretch, and that baby already starts to take a little bit more, and in which case they've built up the tolerance for the 4 hour window. I'd also be making sure, is your bottle actually a full enough bottle at those timings, and are you offering both breasts if it's a breastfeed? But in terms of how, and Beck, I don't know if you would have anything different, I would just say you just offer it at 4 hours.
Yeah, and like there's just no easy way to do it. Like that's the hard part about doing a little bit of sleep work, so if there's an uncomfortable moment where we do have to stretch our little ones out, and like you just said, it may even just be the 1 or 2 spaced feeds, and then they're taking more and so forth. I think that at 6 months also it can be a little easier to do the 4 hour stretch, because at some point in the day we've got the solids that are likely to be introduced, and typically we would see the solids being popped into the mix at maybe around 11:30. So if you're a little unsure about using the 4 hour gap, that would probably be the stretch that I would do it first. So so once the solids have been done, then sort of trying to get to the 3 p.m. feed, so you've got your 4 hour stretch, and then that should be easier to then get to the the 6:30, 7 o'clock milk feed whenever that's happening.
Yeah, they've had a little something else to help take the edge off.
That's
at
right.
That age.
So I think that could be a really good place to start, and then overnight, then you can start to sort of create that 4 hour pattern overnight as well, and makes it easier. So just making sure that you're investing in those feeds as well overnight, making sure that you're doing the full bottle if a bottle is being offered at the 10:30, so 4 hours from the final milk feed of the night, that you're not just offering a really quick one just to get back off to sleep, that you're offering a full feed. So whether that's both breasts or a full bottle, and if they're looking like they're about to fall asleep, just doing that nappy change to wake them up.
Yeah, rouse them in between.
That's
even
right.
halfway through a bottle. So if it's a breastfeed, if they're falling asleep after one side, nappy change. If they're halfway through the bottle and starting to doze off, nappy change to encourage them to finish it off.
Yeah, that's right.
And that is also the tanking up that we want to see 4 hourly during the day, but also for our feeds overnight. That's the whole purpose behind this, is to get really full, beautiful tummy so that you can resettle everything else, knowing we're not sleep training through genuine hunger.
That's right. So yeah, it can be tricky, but it can be done. Just got to persevere.
It can be tricky, but it can be done. I think the other reason why I haven't ever really batted an eyelid doing it is that as a pediatric nurse on the ward that I worked on, babies were often fed nasogastrically, so a tube down their nose, and majority would be on spaced at very set times of when they would feed, and we would actually have to offer them less. They would be fluid restricted, all because of, and I know the listeners here do not have babies that are needing to be fluid restricted, but I think because I just saw that babies were always okay, they were always getting enough, and we always had spaced feeding times, that when I had my own babies, albeit they could have as much or as little as they wanted, I just knew that they had that reserve, and I could just think, okay, well, we'll just go out to the letterbox, or look at the dogs or whatever. And or maybe I just didn't pay it enough attention that you're allowed to be grizzly.
Yep.
And oh, look, now it's feed time. And so I just had probably that confidence already that space feeding was appropriate. Just from my background. But I do know the listeners here do not have babies that are about to have open heart surgery. So take that for what you will. Okay, so the next question is 7.5-month-old Bub has a 1.5 hour sleep on nap 1 and nap 2 and 3 only 30 to 40 minutes. Should I cap the first nap?
Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah. And this is a great sort of and textbook way that we often see sleep start to consolidate. Nap 1 for so many babies is usually the easiest nap of the day, and usually the first one to organically consolidate and become longer. And once we see that and we know that it's possibly taking away sleep pressure from nap 2 and nap 3, we can confidently cap it. You know your baby's got the skills to link a sleep cycle because they've just been doing it. Yeah. Now we give it the sleep pressure to nap 2 when we start to lengthen that one out. Nap 3 will always stay, at 7.5 months, that's going to stay as a cat nap in the afternoon just to bridge you to bedtime. But you can really double down on the nap work for nap 2, which will future-proof you for the months to come, because you already know your baby can do it for nap 1. Then you're going to teach it for nap 2. And by the time they drop it for nap 3, you're like, oh, great. 2 long naps, here we come.
Yeah. Perfect.
I feel like excited for that family.
Yeah, same.
Even though it's so hard, never wake a sleeping baby. In this case, absolutely I would. Yeah. The other reason why is, and I think we've touched on this before, that a 30 to 40 minute nap, as the day goes on and baby's getting naturally tired, so sleep pressure for bedtime really starts from when they wake up in the morning, that in order to sleep well and for us to protect bedtime and all the amazing work that you are all doing overnight, is a baby needs to be really well rested. So there could, for some babies, if they're just having short, choppy naps in the afternoon, by the time bedtime comes, bedtime's either early or they're a bit overtired. They've got a bit of a second wind, and then you might have some overnight waking. So by switching things around, you can also protect that a little bit too.
I think the easiest way of looking at it is we want there to be more sleep in the second half of the day for our little one to go down well rested. So that's why we're not overly worried about nap 1. Like once we know that they can self-settle and link the cycle, that's when we sort of are happy to sort of make sure that we cap it, because the first nap is really just to get you to a really good timing for nap 2, for that one to be a nice, like a longer one, and then the refresher nap after that. So if we're trying to maximize sleep potential overnight, we're looking for, better sleep in the second half of the day.
Yeah. All right. Similar age baby. Last question for today's episode. 7-month-old. Night feeds getting earlier, 11:30 p.m. and 4:30 a.m. Usually full feeds. Tips? Question mark. Tips.
Oh, sorry. How old was the little one? 7.5?
7 months.
Oh, 7 months. I'd be looking at making sure that typically what will happen is, if there's not enough calories going in through the day, then feeds are going to start getting earlier and so forth, because they need more in the tank to carry them through.
So it could be genuine need.
So I would just be looking at making sure that there is really good milk feeds going in through the day, because 2 milk feeds overnight, if they're full feeds, there's potential then that the 7 a.m. milk feed is a bit of a dud, because their baby's not
They've just eaten.
Yeah, so you want to make sure that that's a nice full feed, and then you need to look at if there's enough appetite in there for lunch, like a really good lunch, and then a semi-decent dinner as well. Not a huge amount of dinner, because one thing too that often at this age is everyone's very excited about offering the solids, and sometimes if you've got dinner in the mix at say 5 o'clock, then it's very keep going because they're really enjoying it. But the bigger the dinner is, the consequence of that is that often that final milk feed before bed isn't the greatest. And then because that milk feed hasn't been the greatest, then that typical 11:30 p.m. milk feed is then going to slide earlier.
They're hungry for milk.
Because they're hungry for it. So you've just got to have a really great balance of solids and milk, and potentially looking at, how you redistribute those calories overnight. So face value, it seems really easy, but actually there's probably a few additional things behind that might be worth more of an investigation.
Yeah, just having a look at the structure and the timings and the volume of the feeds, and that includes solids, how much. And sometimes we do need to pull back on solids. Just it's always a little bit of trial and error where we find that balance where the milk feed isn't sort of in jeopardy of being short and not enough, but also keeping some solids in the mix. And I remember my second, he would have just weaned himself from all milk at 6 months of age because he loved his solids. I mean, he's a boy after my own heart. I don't blame him. But he basically went on a breastfeeding strike, and I had to be the parent and sort of outlast him to say, no, the solids are on hold now until you go back to the breast. You're not allowed to. I'm not allowed to wean you onto spaghetti and meatballs at the ripe age of 6 months. So I did have to pull right back, and I've just had to do it for a client last week. And what do you know, within one space feeding, that baby is back on the breast, both sides. We just had to rejig and build some genuine hunger. The other thing I can say, and I think the reason why, Beck, you and I probably go down that path initially reading that question is also that this mum has been specific in that the overnight feeds are full feeds. Yeah. So sometimes feeds can be just snacky, in which case I'm thinking, is this habitual? Is this a sleep association? What could be what? But if they're taking a full feed, then yes, it makes me think, how could we give that back to the day a little bit? The other thing is, and I know you've mentioned this on a previous episode, Beck, is that sometimes feeds can just come a little bit earlier because one night they were offered earlier. Yep. So maybe you had a night where randomly baby woke at 10 p.m. when usually you've been doing your 11:30 p.m. feed, and you thought, oh, that's so weird. I'll go in and feed. And then the next night it stayed at 10 p.m. and that feed just, I remember you talked about it as if, well, if I'm offered a Tim Tam at any time of the night, I'm going to take it. And so now sometimes, and I'm not saying that that's what's happening in this, but it's one of the scenarios I see is that if things are creeping forward, sometimes it can be reinforced. And this baby has no issues with being fed at any time. So they'll take it at 10:30, they'll take it at 11:30. But once you get your day calories all lined up, I would usually say you need to hold steady and resettle anything before that, the feed that we're actually aiming for, so we don't accidentally reinforce it coming earlier, and then you can start to nudge it out, which at 7 months old I'm usually nudging overnight feeds out, particularly if they're two full ones. You know, we keep one full one little one. Fuller gets later and later and later until the short feed's gone.
That's right. You don't want to become stagnant with the feeds, like still having two feeds. You really should be preparing yourself and your little one to be moving along and systematically working those feeds out, because you still, and the reason is, you know, for some families, they just want to be able to have a decent night's sleep, but you can hold on to those feeds for as long as you like, as long as they're, to me, as long as it's not detrimental to the daytime and impacting daytime in a way that we're sort of like, okay, but our hand is tied, we're forced to have this overnight feed because they're not having enough calories
in the thick of reverse cycling.
Yeah, that's right. So you're kind of just always gearing up for the next stage. And babies and toddlers, this is just life with them. Like, you're always sort of, the next step is always on the cards. And so you are working towards reducing and eliminating feeds as they get older. So you should sort of be working towards that. I think it's more of a daytime thing and getting all that hunky-dory, and then sort of looking at your nights.
Yeah, excellent. All right. Well, on that note, I think we've left everyone with a lot of homework to go and do. A lot of scheduling audits, lots of day feeds, and some nap training. So we will see you on the next episode of Sleep Detectives.
Thank
you so much for tuning in.
Thanks, guys. See
Bye.
ya.